Europe has thousands of cities, towns, and villages, but most travelers spend their entire trip moving between the same handful of names: Paris, Rome, London, Barcelona. Beautiful places, all of them, but also some of the most crowded, most expensive, and for senior travelers especially, some of the most physically demanding destinations on the continent. Just beyond those famous names, Europe is full of places offering the same architecture, history, and food culture, without the crowds, without the queues, and often at half the price. Today we're counting down 20 of the most underrated places in Europe. Destinations that deliver everything you came to Europe for in a way that's calmer, more comfortable, and often easier to enjoy than the famous alternatives most people default to. And the city at number 1 has quietly exploded in popularity with American travelers over the last few years. Once you see why, you may find yourself looking up flights before this video even ends. Let's begin. Number 20. Trieste, Italy. Trieste sits in the far northeast corner of Italy, against the Slovenian border, and it offers a side of Italy most American visitors never see. Where Venice can feel like a theme park during peak season, Trieste gives you the same seaside's elegance and grand architecture with a fraction of the foot traffic. Piazza Unità d'Italia is one of the largest sea-facing squares in Europe, grand historic buildings on 3 sides, open water on the 4th. In Venice, this space would be packed wall to wall. In Trieste, you can sit at a cafe table for an hour and watch the light change over the Adriatic without competing for space. The city has some of Italy's oldest, most storied cafes, elegant, unhurried rooms where coffee culture predates the espresso bar. Miramar Castle, just outside the center, sits dramatically above the sea with gardens worth the short trip out. For senior travelers, Trieste's central zone is flat, walkable, and uncrowded enough to move at your own pace. A genuine luxury after fighting crowds in Venice or Florence. If Venice is on your list mainly for the water, the architecture, and the atmosphere, Trieste gives you all 3 with room to breathe. From an Adriatic alternative to Venice, we head north, to a French city one traveler described as feeling like Paris, just calmer and friendlier. Number 19. Lille, France. Lille sits in the far north of France, close enough to Belgium that its character is shaped by both French and Flemish influence, visible in the colorful gabled architecture, markets, and food. The Grand Place sits at the center of the old town, a beautiful historic square ringed by elegant facades and cafe terraces. Steps away, the Old Stock Exchange is a striking example of Flemish Renaissance architecture, ornate without being overwhelming. The Vieux-Lille district beyond it is a network of cobblestone lanes, boutiques, and bakeries that feels genuinely lived in rather than curated for visitors. Lille's Palais des Beaux-Arts is one of the largest art museums in France, and on most days, you'll have entire galleries practically to yourself, a sharp contrast to the queues at the Louvre. For senior travelers in Paris, Lille is barely an hour away by high-speed rail, one of the easiest day trips or overnight stays in Northern Europe, with none of the capital's intensity. Lille offers Parisian elegance at a more human scale and a noticeably gentler pace, ideal for travelers who want the architecture and atmosphere of France's capital without its crowds or cost. From northern France into Belgium, to a canal city that consistently gets overshadowed by its more famous neighbor, despite arguably having more to offer. Number 18. Ghent, Belgium. Most American visitors to Belgium head straight to Bruges, lovely, but now one of the most crowded small cities in Europe, with day trippers filling its lanes for much of the year. Ghent, 20 minutes away by train, offers the same medieval canal city beauty with far fewer visitors. Ghent's skyline along the Graslay and Korenlay, 2 historic quays facing each other across the river, is one of the most photogenic stretches of architecture in Belgium. Guildhouses with stepped gables reflected in the water, especially striking in evening light. St. Bavo's Cathedral houses the Ghent altarpiece, one of the most significant works of art in European history, and unlike the Louvre's Mona Lisa, you can usually view it without a crowd. The city center is flat, compact, and largely pedestrianized, one of the more comfortable historic centers in Belgium for travelers who want to walk without steep cobblestones or crowds. Ghent delivers everything that draws people to Bruges: canals, guildhouses, medieval atmosphere with room to actually enjoy it. From Belgium's canals to one of the smallest and most charming capital cities in Europe. One most Americans couldn't place on a map, and that's exactly the point. Number 17. Ljubljana, Slovenia. Ljubljana is the capital of Slovenia, and might be the most underrated capital on this list. It has the riverside charm people travel to Prague for, the cafe culture people travel to Vienna for, and a scale so small and walkable you can see the entire historic center in a single unhurried day. The Ljubljanica River runs through the center, lined with outdoor cafes and crossed by ornate bridges, including the famous Dragon Bridge, guarded by 4 bronze dragon statues. Ljubljana Castle sits on a hill above the old town, reachable by funicular for travelers who'd rather not climb, with views across the city and surrounding mountains. The pedestrianized old town means no traffic noise, no dodging cars, just cobblestone streets, market stalls, and riverside seating. Slovenia has one of the best safety records in Europe, and Ljubljana's compact size makes it one of the least overwhelming capitals for first-time visitors. Ljubljana is the kind of city that quietly becomes someone's favorite stop on a European trip. Small enough to never feel exhausting, beautiful enough to remember for years. From a capital built around a river to a small Portuguese town built around canals, often called the Venice of Portugal, with none of Venice's crowds or prices. Number 16. Aveiro, Portugal. Aveiro sits on Portugal's central coast, threaded with canals once used by colorful, gondola-like boats called moliceiros to harvest seaweed. Today, those boats carry visitors past Art Nouveau facades in pastel colors that make Aveiro one of the most visually distinctive small towns in the country. The central canal area is compact, flat, and walkable. A short loop takes you past the main bridges, the fish market, and the Art Nouveau buildings that give the town its nickname. Aveiro is also famous for ovos moles, a delicate egg yolk sweet wrapped in thin pastry shaped like shells and fish. A short drive away, Costa Nova Beach is known for candy-striped wooden houses lined along the dunes, one of the most photographed stretches of coastline in Portugal, and almost unknown to American travelers. Aveiro is also a simple train ride from Porto, making it an easy, rewarding half-day or overnight addition to a Portugal itinerary. Aveiro offers canal town charm, distinctive architecture, and a beach unlike anywhere else in Europe. At Portuguese prices, with almost none of the crowds. From Portugal's coast to Bavaria, to a German town so well preserved its entire old town carries UNESCO protection, and that most American visitors to Germany have never heard of. Number 15. Bamberg, Germany. Bamberg escaped the bombing that destroyed so much of Germany during World War II, so its old town survives largely intact. Over 1,000 half-timbered buildings, a hilltop cathedral, and a townscape that looks much as it did centuries ago. The Altes Rathaus Old Town Hall sits on a bridge spanning the Regnitz River, its facade covered in elaborate frescoes. Bamberg Cathedral, with its 4 distinctive spires, rises above the old town and houses several significant medieval tombs and sculptures. Bamberg is also the historic home of Rauchbier, smoked beer, a centuries-old specialty brewed in a handful of traditional breweries still operating in the old town. For travelers interested in genuine German beer culture, Bamberg offers something that's become rare even in Munich. The town's layout follows the river and several low hills, gently graded streets rather than steep climbs, making it comfortably walkable for most senior travelers. Bamberg is one of the best preserved medieval towns in Germany and one of the least visited by Americans, a combination becoming rarer every year. From Bavaria back into France to the Alsace region, and a town so picturesque it's inspired animated films, despite most visitors having no idea where it is. Number 14. Colmar, France. Colmar sits in Alsace, near the German border, and its architecture reflects that history directly. Half-timbered houses in pastel colors, steep gabled roofs, and small canals give Colmar a fairy tale quality that's become famous in photographs, even when the name attached to them usually isn't. La Petite Venise, Little Venice, is the canal-side district where colorful half-timbered houses lean over the water, connected by small footbridges. It's compact, flat, and one of the most photographed corners of Alsace. Colmar is also at the heart of one of France's most respected wine regions. The Alsace wine route winds through villages surrounded by vineyards, with tasting rooms in towns worth visiting themselves. The Unterlinden Museum, housed in a former convent, holds the Isenheim altarpiece, one of the most important works of religious art in France. The old town is compact enough to explore on foot in a single day, with flat terrain throughout the historic core. Colmar delivers the fairy tale Alsace look so many travelers have seen in photos without knowing where it was, plus genuine wine culture and art history layered underneath. From a fairy tale village in France to one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements on Earth, a city carved directly into rock in a part of Italy most visitors never reach. Number 13. Matera, Italy. Matera sits in Basilicata, southern Italy. Its most famous feature is the Sassi, ancient cave dwellings carved into limestone cliffs above a ravine, inhabited continuously for thousands of years. As recently as the mid-20th century, these caves were considered a symbol of poverty. Today, many have been restored into hotels, restaurants, and homes, and the district is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Walking through the Sassi at golden hour, when warm stone catches the late sun, is one of the most visually striking experiences in Italy, drawing a fraction of the crowds found on the Amalfi Coast or Cinque Terre during the same season. The city has appeared in several major productions, including a James Bond film, which has slowly raised its profile, but it remains far less visited than its on-screen presence might suggest. Matera's terrain is genuinely hilly. The cave district involves steps and slopes, but several main viewpoints and the upper town are accessible. Without steep climbing, and many converted cave hotels offer comfort that belies their ancient exteriors. Matera offers one of the most unusual, visually unforgettable cityscapes in Europe. Ancient, cinematic, and still mostly undiscovered by American travelers. From a cave city in southern Italy to Transylvania, to a town built by Saxon settlers 8 centuries ago, with an architectural quirk that's instantly recognizable once you've seen it. Number 12. Sibiu, Romania. Sibiu was founded by German-speaking Saxon settlers in the 12th century, and that heritage is visible everywhere in the city's colorful, steep-roofed houses, many featuring small dormer windows positioned to look like eyes watching over the squares below, a detail locals call the Eyes of Sibiu. The grand square and small square are connected by passageways and stairs, lined with pastel facades in yellow, green, and blue that give the old town a storybook quality. The council tower offers panoramic views over the rooftops and the surrounding hills of Transylvania. Romania remains one of the most affordable countries in the EU. Meals, accommodation, and transport cost a fraction of equivalent experiences in Western Europe. without compromising safety or comfort in cities like Sibiu. The Old Town is compact and largely pedestrianized, with most major sites within a short, flat walk of each other. Sibiu offers the colorful Old Town charm travelers associate with Prague or Bruges, the storybook character of Transylvania, and prices that make it one of the best value destinations on this list. From the colorful squares of Transylvania to the French Alps, to a lakeside town that delivers the postcard image of alpine Europe, without the usual prices. Number 11. Annecy, France. Annecy sits at the edge of Lake Annecy, with the French Alps rising directly behind it, turquoise water, snow-capped peaks, and a perfectly preserved old town that feels like a smaller, more accessible version of what people travel to Switzerland or Lake Como to find. The Old Town is threaded with canals, sometimes called the Venice of the Alps, lined with flower-covered buildings and small bridges. The Palais de Lille, a triangular former prison on its own tiny island in the canal, is one of the most photographed buildings in the region. Lake Annecy is considered one of the cleanest lakes in Europe, with a promenade along its edge that's flat, scenic, and ideal for a gentle walk with mountain views the entire way. Compared to equivalent lakeside towns in Switzerland, Annecy offers a similar setting at noticeably lower prices, a meaningful difference for travelers planning a longer stay. Annecy combines alpine scenery, canal town charm, and lake views in a single walkable destination at a fraction of what a comparable Swiss town would cost. And now, entering the top 10. Starting with a city that claims to be one of the oldest continuously inhabited places in Europe, with ancient history still woven into daily life. Number 10. Plovdiv, Bulgaria. Plovdiv has been continuously inhabited for roughly 6,000 years, predating Rome and Athens as urban centers. Thracian, Roman, Ottoman, and Bulgarian influences sit side by side, often within the same city block. The Roman amphitheater, built in the 2nd century, is remarkably well preserved and still hosts concerts and performances today, a 2,000-year-old venue still in active use. The Old Town above it is a maze of cobblestone lanes and colorful 19th-century houses in the distinctive Bulgarian National Revival style, with elaborately painted facades and overhanging upper floors. Plovdiv's pedestrianized main street, Kapana, meaning the trap, has become the city's creative district, filled with small galleries, cafes, and workshops in restored buildings. Like much of Bulgaria, Plovdiv remains extremely affordable by Western European standards, and the city center is compact enough to explore comfortably over a few days without long transfers. Plovdiv offers genuine ancient history, Roman ruins still in everyday use, wrapped in a colorful, walkable old town, at prices that make it one of the best value historic cities in Europe. From ancient Bulgaria to the Adriatic coast, to a fortified town on one of the most dramatic bays in Europe, often mentioned alongside Dubrovnik, but visited by a fraction of the people. Number 9. Kotor, Montenegro. Kotor sits on the Bay of Kotor, enclosed by steep mountains, so dramatically it's sometimes called Europe's southernmost fjord. The Old Town, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is a fortified medieval settlement with stone walls, narrow lanes, and mountains rising almost vertically from the water. The Old Town itself is compact and largely flat, easy to explore on foot with small squares, churches, and cafes tucked behind the fortified walls. For travelers with more energy, the city walls climb dramatically up the mountainside, offering one of the most spectacular viewpoints in the Balkans. Though this climb is steep and not necessary to enjoy the town itself. Cruise ships do stop in Kotor, but in far smaller numbers than Dubrovnik, and the bay setting means the town never reaches the same crowd density even on busy days. Montenegro overall remains significantly less expensive than Croatia, while offering a comparable, some would argue more dramatic, Coastal setting. Kotor offers the fortified old town beauty and dramatic coastal scenery that draws crowds to Dubrovnik, in a setting that's arguably even more striking, with far less competition for the view. From Montenegro's bay back to Spain, to a city less than an hour from Barcelona by train, offering a quieter, more intact version of the medieval charm, Barcelona's old quarter has largely lost to crowds. Number 8. Girona, Spain. Girona sits in Catalonia, a short high-speed train ride from Barcelona, close enough for an easy day trip, substantial enough to reward staying longer. Its old town is known internationally as a Game of Thrones filming location, but its history long predates that. Girona has one of the best preserved medieval Jewish quarters in Europe. The Anyar River runs through the city center, lined on both banks with brightly colored houses rising directly from the water. One of the most photographed views in Catalonia, and noticeably less crowded than equivalent scenes in Barcelona. The medieval walls that once encircled the city can still be walked in sections, offering views over the rooftops and cathedral. Girona Cathedral has one of the widest Gothic naves in the world, and the steps leading up to it are often used for outdoor events and photography, usually without the queues found at Barcelona's major sites. As a base, Girona offers Barcelona's Catalan culture and architecture with a meaningfully calmer pace and significantly lower accommodation costs. Girona gives travelers the medieval Catalan atmosphere. Barcelona's old quarter has increasingly lost to crowds, with the bonus of being one of the most photogenic riverside cityscapes in Spain. From Catalonia to the Baltic, to a medieval old town so well preserved, it's often described as what Prague looked like before mass tourism arrived. Number 7. Tallinn, Estonia. Tallinn's old town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most completely preserved medieval city centers in Northern Europe. Cobblestone streets, defensive towers, church spires, and merchant houses that have survived largely intact since the 14th and 15th centuries. Toompea Hill, at the heart of the old town, offers panoramic viewpoints over the city's red rooftops and out toward the Baltic Sea. The town hall square below is ringed by pastel merchant houses and has functioned as the city's central gathering point for centuries. Tallinn is compact enough that the entire old town can be explored on foot in a day or two, with most of the historic core flat or gently sloped. Estonia consistently ranks among the safest and most digitally advanced countries in Europe, and English is widely spoken. The city has become a popular Baltic cruise stop, but even with that traffic, it retains a sense of authenticity increasingly rare in medieval old towns of comparable beauty. Tallinn offers the medieval old town experience many travelers hope to find in Prague. Fewer crowds, lower prices, and a striking Baltic setting most Americans have never considered. From the Baltic back to Italy, to a hilltop town just outside Milan that most travelers fly past without realizing what they're missing. Number 6. Bergamo, Italy. Bergamo sits in Lombardy, a short distance from Milan, and is actually served by one of Milan's airports, meaning many American travelers land within sight of it without ever stopping. Its upper old town, Città Alta, sits on a hill above the modern lower city, reachable by a funicular operating since the 19th century. The Città Alta is a genuinely beautiful Renaissance hill town, piazzas, churches, and narrow lanes with views stretching across the Lombard plains toward the Alps on clear days. The funicular means travelers can reach the upper town's elevation and views without a difficult climb, a meaningful advantage over many other Italian hill towns. Piazza Vecchia, at the heart of the upper town, is considered by some architectural historians among the most beautiful squares in Italy, and on most days, calm enough to simply sit and take it in. For travelers arriving in or departing from Milan, Bergamo offers a rewarding stop requiring minimal detour from the airport. Bergamo turns what's often just an airport transfer into one of the most pleasant and accessible hill town experiences in northern Italy. And now, the top 5. Beginning with a Baltic port city whose merchant-era architecture rivals the Netherlands, and whose modern history changed the course of an entire region. Number 5. Gdańsk, Poland. Gdańsk's old town is built around the Long Market, a grand street lined with the colorful, ornately gabled merchant houses typical of the Hanseatic trading cities. The same architectural tradition that shaped much of historic Amsterdam, but on Poland's Baltic coast. At the center of the Long Market stands the Neptune Fountain, a symbol of the city's centuries-long relationship with the sea. Along the Motwawa River, the waterfront promenade is lined with restaurants, historic ships, and the towering medieval Gdańsk crane, once used to load cargo onto trading vessels arriving from across Europe. Gdańsk's history runs deeper than its architecture suggests. It was here that the Solidarity movement began in the 1980s, the labor movement that played a central role in ending communist rule in Poland and, eventually, across Eastern Europe. Walking through the shipyards and monuments connected to that history adds a layer of modern significance few European cities can match. The old town is flat, compact, and walkable, with a riverside setting that makes for easy, scenic strolling. Gdańsk combines Hanseatic architectural grandeur with genuinely significant modern history, a Baltic city that rewards both the eyes and the curiosity. From Poland's Baltic coast to Portugal, to a city whose skyline is so distinctive that a single glance is usually enough to recognize it, even for people who've never been. Number 4. Porto, Portugal. Porto is built on steep hills above the Douro River, with red-roofed houses stacked in layers down toward the water. One of the most recognizable cityscapes in Europe, one that reveals itself all at once rather than slowly. The Ribeira district at the riverfront is a maze of narrow streets, small squares, and cafes where the city's daily life plays out in full view. The Dom Luís I Bridge, a massive iron double-deck bridge, offers, from its upper level, sweeping views across the colorful rooftops, church towers, and boats moving along the Douro. Porto is, of course, the namesake of port wine, and the cellars across the river in Vila Nova de Gaia have aged barrels of it for centuries, many offering tastings with views back across to the old town. Porto's hills are real and some streets are steep, but the riverside areas, main squares, and several viewpoints are accessible without major climbing, and funiculars and trams cover some of the steeper connections. Porto remains, for now, calmer and less expensive than Lisbon while offering an equally, arguably more, striking setting. One of the best value major cities on this list, and now the top 3, starting in Andalusia, in a city where the evening is often when everything truly begins. Number 3. Seville, Spain. In Seville, life shifts into a different rhythm once the heat of the day fades. Streets fill, plazas come alive, and the sound of conversation, and often live guitar, drifts through the lanes of the old town. This is the heart of Andalusia, and few cities capture its character as completely. The Royal Alcazar is a palace complex of intricate Moorish architecture, colorful tilework, and shaded courtyards, one of the most beautiful surviving examples of Moorish design in Europe. Nearby, Seville Cathedral is among the largest churches in the world, with its bell tower, La Giralda, rising above the entire old town. The Plaza de España spreads out in a grand semicircle of bridges, fountains, and tiled alcoves representing each region of Spain. A single space capturing the scale and craftsmanship of the city's architectural tradition. What defines Seville beyond its landmarks is its atmosphere. Cafes that stay lively into the evening, streets that invite wandering without an itinerary, and a pace of life built around the cooler hours of the day. Seville offers Moorish architecture, grand public spaces, and an evening atmosphere few European cities can match. Best experienced in spring or autumn, when the famous Andalusian warmth is comfortable rather than overwhelming. From Andalusia to Central Europe, to a capital so visually striking, it's often the city that surprises first-time visitors most, regardless of how much they thought they knew beforehand. Number 2. Budapest, Hungary. Budapest stretches along both banks of the Danube, with grand architecture rising above the water and bridges connecting the historic districts of Buda and Pest. The overall effect, especially at night, when major buildings are illuminated, is one of the most cinematic skylines in Europe. The Hungarian Parliament building, with its enormous dome and intricate Gothic detailing, dominates the riverbank from the Pest side. Across the water, Buda Castle sits on a hill overlooking the city, and nearby, Fisherman's Bastion, a terrace of white towers and arches, offers one of the most famous viewpoints in Europe, with a fairy tale quality photographs barely do justice. Budapest's thermal baths are a genuinely unique draw. Natural hot springs feed grand bathhouses like Széchenyi and Gellért, where soaking in warm mineral water surrounded by ornate architecture has been part of local life for over a century. For senior travelers, these baths offer a relaxing, low-impact way to spend an afternoon unlike almost anything else in Europe. Budapest remains significantly more affordable than Vienna or Prague, while offering architecture and river views that rival both. Budapest combines one of Europe's most dramatic skylines with a uniquely relaxing thermal bath culture. Elegant, affordable, and full of life. And that brings us to number 1. In recent years, this city has quietly exploded in popularity among American travelers, driven by its medieval character, its dramatic setting, and a region around it just as beautiful as the city itself. Number 1. Edinburgh, Scotland. Few cities in Europe have a skyline quite like Edinburgh's. Rising above the city on an ancient volcanic rock, Edinburgh Castle dominates the view from almost everywhere in the center, giving the Scottish capital an instantly recognizable, almost storybook silhouette. The historic spine of the city is the Royal Mile, a long stone street running from the castle down to the Palace of Holyrood House, lined with centuries-old buildings, narrow alleyways called closes and courtyards that open unexpectedly off the main street. Walking it genuinely feels like moving through layers of history rather than past a recreation of it. Edinburgh's hills create some of the best urban viewpoints in Europe. Arthur's Seat, another ancient volcanic formation, rises within the city itself, and for travelers able to manage the walk, the views from its summit over the entire city and out to the Firth of Forth are extraordinary. For those who prefer not to climb, Calton Hill offers similarly sweeping views via a much gentler path. Despite its medieval bones, Edinburgh has a thoroughly modern cultural life. The Edinburgh Festival, held every August, is one of the largest arts festivals on the planet, drawing performers and audiences from across the globe. Though travelers seeking a quieter visit may prefer the rest of the year, when the city's atmosphere is calmer, but its character is unchanged. For senior travelers, Edinburgh's compact city centre means most major sites: the Castle, the Royal Mile, the National Museum of Scotland, Princes Street Gardens, are within a comfortable walking radius of each other, with level paths available as alternatives to steeper sections. What ties all 20 of these places together is the same thing that makes Edinburgh such a fitting place to end this list. Each offers something genuinely extraordinary: architecture, history, atmosphere, scenery, without asking you to fight a crowd, stand in a line for hours, or pay the premium that comes with the most famous names in Europe. Europe doesn't run out of beautiful places once you've seen Paris, Rome, and Barcelona. In many ways, that's where it starts to get interesting. And that's our countdown. 20 places across Europe that deliver everything the famous destinations promise, without the crowds, the queues, or the price tag that usually comes with them. Europe is full of incredible places, and you don't have to stick to the handful of names everyone already knows to experience its history, architecture, and atmosphere at their best. Now I want to hear from you. Have you visited any of these places? Which one is going on your list first? Let me know in the comments. And if there's a hidden gem you think deserves a spot on a future list, share it below. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe. It genuinely helps us keep making honest, research-based travel content like this.